listening to the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast, a podcast in sisterhood for female entrepreneurs that serves up savvy, actionable marketing advice and interviews with creative business owners who are in the trenches, building their businesses as we speak. The Marketing in Yoga Pants community is for you, the girl on her couch, in her yoga pants, top knot tight, hunched over her MacBook, trying her hardest to get the word out about her business. So in the name of supporting each other while supporting ourselves, bringing community, sound marketing advice, coffee, chocolate, and wine together for you, yoga pants wearing business owner, in a world where followers mean nothing, but paying customers mean the world, join us on this week's podcast episode and in our private Facebook group where you'll meet your soul sisters and build your business in yoga pants. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. I'm Brit, and I'm here today with none other than Steph Crowder, host of the Courage and Clarity podcast and 1/3 of the team at Fizzle.co. Thank you so much for joining me today, Steph.
Brit, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Oh, I am equally as excited to have you. So Steph and I just met like literally 60 seconds ago as she hopped on the Zoom call with me for the interview. And you might be wondering, how in the world did you get Steph Crowder on your podcast, Brit? As you guys know, I interviewed Amanda Boleyn a few weeks ago for season 2 of the podcast. And we, as you heard, gushed over Steph and her podcast and everything she does. And Amanda so graciously connected me with Steph. I said, Steph, would love to have you on the podcast. I want to continue moving you guys as listeners of my podcast over to Courage and Clarity because I find it to be such a good resource, not just for, how to run your business, how to get your business off the ground, but also so much of the mindset behind that, all of the stuff that goes into that. So I'm really excited to have her on today, get some insight into how she earns her living, what life is like right now, and what makes it all tick. So Steph, you ready to jump in?
I am, and you are so kind. Thank you for the nice words. And I have to say, just to bring things full circle, I love Amanda Boleyn. She has become a dear friend. We both live in Chicago. And funnily enough, I don't know if I'd be sitting here if it wasn't for Amanda Bo, because I got to know her when I was still, I'm sure we'll talk about my background, but when I was still doing the corporate thing, it was over coffee with Amanda when she said to me, what do you have to lose? So I don't know that I would have made the leap without her. So she's fantastic.
Oh, that's so cool. And I love how we're all kind of connecting in this crazy online space now. So, that's awesome. Okay, so let's do this. Let's jump in. Steph, tell me about how you earn your living.
Yeah. So like you said, Britt, I am 1/3 of the team at Fizzle.co. I am joined by my friends and coworkers, Corbett Barr and Chase Reeves. They are the co-founders of Fizzle. And if anybody out there hasn't heard of Fizzle, we are a community and courses for creatives, freelancers, and entrepreneurs of all kinds. So at this moment in time, we have roughly 2,000 members all across the world. Over the 5 years that Fizzle's been around, we've had over 10,000 members come through our doors, which is amazing and so mind-blowing. So my technical role over there, although we really all share all the hats, honestly, I am the director of member success, which some members lovingly refer to me as the den mama, which I love because it basically just means that I am the customer person. Anything that has to do with our people, coaching, hooking people up with the resources they need to keep making progress week after week. That's really our mantra at Fizzle, is even when things get so overwhelming and you want to quit and nobody understands what it is that you're trying to do with this crazy entrepreneurship thing, our goal for people is to have the tools and inspiration to just take things one step at a time and not give up. So that's what we do at Fizzle. And then, like you said as well, I'm the host of the Courage and Clarity podcast, which is one part inspiration and one part instruction for people who are pursuing what they love in business and in life. So lots of stuff going on, but it's all fun and it's all in the name of inspiring people to go after what I like to refer to as meaningful work.
Oh, so well said. I mean, I listen to you all the time, but man, girl, that was awesome. And probably not edited at all. So that's amazing. Tell me, just before we move into how you got to be doing this with your life, because I know how juicy of a story that is.
Mm.
Tell me how courage and clarity kind of fits in with the Fizzle stuff.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
Yeah, so I am lucky to work with some of the most fabulous people who it's so fun because what we do at Fizzle is one of our big mantras at Fizzle is that everything in business is a hypothesis. Everything is an experiment. And I love that we treat things that way because it gives us the opportunity to play around. So when one of us has an idea, we tend to trust each other. And long ago, actually, it took me a long time to actually pull the trigger on courage and clarity. I've always kind of had this desire to fill what I saw as a need in the podcast marketplace. So in particular, I'm passionate about all entrepreneurs, but the female thing appeals to me most importantly because I've recently became a mom, and I believe that women have a unique challenge when it comes to parenting and career. And I love female focused podcasts, but I didn't see one that combined the inspiration with strategy. It felt to me like the podcasts out there were either highly, highly aspirational, which left you kind of feeling high, but not having the tactics to apply them, or they were purely strategic and not tethered to vision. So I really wanted to create something that fused those two things. And that's the goal of the podcast, is to provide one half of the vision and then the other side of things, which is the actual process that you take. So this came to be because Fizzle has always, I'm the first female at Fizzle on the leadership team, and the guys are very transparent and self-aware about the fact that it's been a highly male-dominated brand. We have many amazing women in Fizzle, but as the first woman on the leadership team, I think they definitely recognized a need and a desire to be more inclusive of women and be just kind of start that conversation. So when I expressed interest in focusing on that, they were all for it, and it's proven so far to be a really good use of our time. And I think it's helped us be more well-rounded, and it's changed our brand, which has been really cool to be a part of and to drive.
Yeah, you're totally right. It has changed your brand. I mean, I would listen to the Fizzle podcast and before you were in there, so it was all guys, and that was all cool.
Yep.
But as a female, having you walk in and be part of those conversations, I love listening to it that much more because I'm always interested to hear, okay, but what does Steph have to say about this? Because I know I'm probably I'm probably gonna do a little fist pump, like, yes, that was what I wanted to talk about too. So yeah, I love that perspective that you bring to that team. Okay, so seeing as how that is what you do in your day to day, tell me the story of how you got here.
Ooh,
Give
girlfriend.
it to me.
Okay.
I know.
So, all right. So I have to start at the beginning, which is, I live in Chicago, and I moved here right after college. And at the time it was 2010. So the job market was recovering from all the craziness of 2008. And it was kind of still tough out there. I was lucky enough to go to a great university. I always thought it would be pretty easy to just get a job. Like when you're in college, they don't really tell you that it's kind of difficult to find what you're looking for. So I actually had the experience of not really being able to get the kind of job I thought I wanted. When I was in college, I majored in English, and I thought I wanted to maybe go to an advertising agency, and I wasn't able to get a job like that. So I came to Chicago with an internship. Couple of guys, this is becoming a theme in my life. Couple of guys founded a company in Chicago. It is called Game Day Housing, and it was really cool, scrappy company that was dedicated to basically my job there was to pick up the phone and call people who lived close to college stadiums and ask them if they wanted to leave their house for the weekend so people could rent their home and go to football games. So I would call people and be like, hey, you live really close to Alabama's football stadium. Do you want to leave your house and make $5,000 this weekend? Like, that was my job. So that was like, yeah. And I was like, what am I doing? So that was actually a great experience. I loved the guys I worked for. And when the internship ended, I needed to make a big girl decision. They weren't really they offered to bring me on, but it was still pretty young and it wasn't going to be enough to like sustain my life in Chicago. So I knew I had to look at something else. And at the time, this little company, Chicago born, called Groupon, had just launched. And I was receiving Groupon's emails. Nobody had heard of Groupon at this point, except for people who lived in Chicago. And we were looking at, like, all my friends would like look at the deals. And somebody along the way said, you should see if you could work at Groupon. And I was like, wow, that would be cool. So lo and behold, I looked at their page and they were hiring salespeople. And I joined that company in 2010. And I started on the sales floor. I was managing the South Florida market, calling restaurants and spas, asking them if they wanted to be on this website called Groupon. And that thing took off like a rocket ship. Chances are people who are listening have heard of Groupon. It really was a crazy experience. I was employee like early 400s. And by the time I left in 2015, there were over 10,000 employees worldwide.
Wow.
So it was bananas. And I was lucky enough to, like I always say, have a seat on a rocket ship, and everybody was young. It was super fun. And I learned a lot about sales. I learned a lot about the sales process. I learned a lot about psychology of selling and what's really happening in the brain when we make a buying decision. I went from seeing sales as persuading people to do things and feeling really skeezy to actually understanding somebody's needs and positioning your solution in a way that satisfies those needs. So I got really lucky because I had a successful career in sales there, and I started to train other people. So I built the sales training department at Groupon. By the time I left, I was the director of sales training for North America. So I was only 26. It was like crazy. I think it was a combination of tenacity, working hard, and also being in the right place at the right time. So I had this great position. I grew our department to like 26 people, 25 or 26 people. And things were going great. I had great mentors, amazing mentors, and I was making good money. And what ended up happening, because people are always like, how did you end up at Fizzle? It's so weird. I don't even know. I can't even pinpoint exactly how this started. But what I can tell you is I started listening to Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn. Mm-hmm. And I think I may have discovered Pat through Jess Lively. I've been a fan of Jess Lively's podcast, The Lively Show, for as long as I can remember. We have a mutual friend here in Chicago, and that may have been my entry into this whole world that I didn't even know existed. And I will never forget, like, once I realized that there were people, Pat Flynn would have people on his show who were like, hey, I was a middle school teacher, and then I realized I could like have this website, and now I don't work in a traditional job and I just like work in my house and I make money online. I was like, what are you talking about? I mean, I was so fascinated. I had no idea that this existed. And I was hooked. I was hooked on these stories of people who were doing this. I couldn't believe it. And I would drive in my car every morning listening to Pat Flynn and the people he brought on his show. And I just felt more and more every day like, this has to be me. Like, this has to be me. I have to be able to do this. Mostly because I knew that down the line, I did want to become a parent and I wanted to be a mom. But I knew myself well enough to know that I would never give up career. And I didn't want to have to make that choice. I know many, many people are happy to, have their kids in full-time care out of the house while they go to an office. But I just didn't see it being compatible with my life once I realized that people like Pat would talk about dropping their kids off at school every day. And I was like, and people would comment, Pat Flynn talks about how people comment at his kids' school, like, what do you do that allows you to do this? And it just was so cool to me. I became really obsessed with it. And I knew I had to do something. I knew I had to do something that I could scratch this itch. And I knew that I would eventually have to find a way to see if I could make it in this world. So that's kind of how I broke into this whole thing.
Okay. So I see so many similarities in our stories. Like, I used to listen to Pat Flynn. I remember, it's so funny. I remember listening to that podcast episode where he was explaining how he took his kids in, him and his wife, and they're like, what do you do? Like, we're lawyers and doctors, and how do you do this? I totally remember that. Yeah. And that same little prickly feeling for me. Like, I don't know everything about this world, but all I know is I think it might be what I need to do. So that's really, okay. So you're at Groupon being quote unquote successful.
Yes.
what happened, or what was the progression from being at Groupon, running amazing things at age 26, to saying, you know what, I'm going to leave this thing. I'm going to leave Groupon. What happened and what did you do?
So I think that one thing that I've noticed that always motivates me is ownership. And this is becoming a theme that I have to have a project that I own. I don't know. It's something about having the autonomy really motivates me. I like being able to fail. I'm a people person, which is probably why I run all the people side of things at Fizzle. So for me, having a project that's all my own, it gives me the space to experiment without feeling like I let a lot of people down if I fail. So I think that might be, I've been thinking more about this. I think that might be what motivates me to have my own projects, because if I feel like other people and their ability to eat or not eat depends on my creativity, it's a lot of pressure for me. So I started, after listening to the podcasts that we talked about, Smart Passive Income, as well as the Lively Show, and eventually the Fizzle Show, actually, I thought to myself, okay, I bet I could try something. I want to do something. And I should mention too that before I got to this point, I had always kind of experimented with blogging. I never talk about this, but way back in the day, I got a health coaching certificate. I'm kind of interested in nutrition as a side passion. So I actually had like a food blog way back, but that wasn't really the thing. It wasn't quite right. So I kind of always knew that maybe I would. I love writing. Like I mentioned, I studied English in college. So blogging was always kind of like this natural, fun thing for me. So listening to these podcasts, I asked myself, okay, what am I really good at? Like, what is my unique selling proposition? And I realized that it's not every day that you meet someone who's 26 and runs a organization within a international company. So I thought to myself, and I was noticing that a lot of people, particularly young women, were messaging me on LinkedIn or even within my own company, just asking if they could have coffee with me because they wanted to get my advice and they wanted to know how I got to this point. So that inspired me to start a career coaching business. I love leadership. I love skills and strength-based coaching. So it was natural to me to try to start a career coaching business. So I started this business called Miss Corner Office. And my goal was to coach, inspire, mentor, and help women, young women, find their dream careers, primarily people in their 20s and 30s. I had done a lot of interviewing at Groupon, both as a interviewee and an interviewer. So I have a lot of insight into what people look for in resumes, how to rock an interview. So I was kind of more focused on that side of things. And I would have those conversations with women, and I started just bringing on coaching clients however I could get them, and blogging. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just kind of experimenting. And I joined Fizzle as a customer, actually, and just like looking to my experts to guide me in terms of how do I build, like all the thing that you were trying to do, Brit, the thing I'm trying to do now with Courage and Clarity, the real work of how do I build an audience? How do I serve people? How do I make this thing work? So for me, it started with that career coaching business.
Okay. And then how did Fizzle come in?
So like I said, I started as a customer. So as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of the Lively Show. And one day I was driving in my car, and this guy came on the podcast named Corbett Barr, and he was the CEO of this company called Fizzle. And remember, at the time at Groupon, I am the director of training, sales training. And this guy comes on and says they do training for entrepreneurs. I pulled over my car. I was like, what is this? Like entrepreneurship and training. These are like my two professional skills and passions. Like this sounds amazing. And I loved his story. If people out there aren't familiar with Fizzle and they don't know Corbett, you guys should go listen to his story. There's an episode that he did with Jess Lively way back in the day. There are plenty of Fizzle Show episodes where Corbett talks about his story, but it was incredibly similar to my own. And I saw myself in his story. He was very successful at a young age. He was involved in like venture-backed startups. And he basically had a breakdown, and he and his wife took a sabbatical to Mexico. And they were like, what are we going to do? And he started blogging, and he decided that he wanted to be, part of this whole like lifestyle business. This is where I started learning about lifestyle business. I was like, what is that? A lifestyle business is where you're actually creating a business to fuel a lifestyle instead of trying to just build like the most profitable empire of all time. It's more about your values. And I was enthralled by this idea. So after discovering Corbett, I became a subscriber of the Fizzle Show, got introduced to the other guys just by listening to them. And I like I said, I joined as a customer. So I was so interested in the concept of Fizzle that I was just in there as a member. And I'm building my business, I'm doing my thing, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't know what's going to happen next. I just know that something is got to give. And I remember, this is crazy. I remember in 2015, it was like January here in Chicago. It was freezing cold outside. I was sitting in my car after work, and I was so, I don't want to say, maybe it is desperate. I was so like eager to change something. I was like, I want to be on my own. I want to work from home and have my own business. Like I've got to make this happen. And it was January. I'm sitting in my car on the phone with my mom. I just parked and I said, I am going to leave Groupon on April 17th, 2015. I don't know how. This is January. I was like, I don't know how, but like that is my date. That's my deadline. I'm going to make this happen. And maybe it was April 15th, because then fast forward, Fizzle posts this job description for a part-time customer service person. And I decided, I was like, I'm going to put my name in the hat for this. And I applied. I found out later from the guys at Fizzle that they actually like basically threw my resume out because they thought it was a joke because I was so overqualified. We're just like, this has got to be a joke. But they weren't really sure it was going to work just because of, what my qualifications were. But my conversations with them in the interview process were exactly what I had hoped for. They are exactly who they seem like on the podcast. And my hope was if I could just get a foot in the door, maybe something bigger would come of it. And I thought worst case scenario, I'll work for them part-time and keep building my side hustle. So I put my name in the hat for that, and they were able to bring me on full-time. It was still 50 or 60% less than what I was making at Groupon. So it was a major risk, but I decided to go for it. And I think so, like I said, that date in my head was April 15th. My last day at Groupon was April 17th, which is so bizarre, but that's just how it worked out. And I really set my mind on that and kind of, I think, made it happen. So it was very uncertain in the beginning, but I just knew I wanted to be something about the mission and the personalities that was like the perfect mix of what I really wanted my life to look like. So I went for it.
That's awesome. And I'm really glad that you did. I love that story. And I know that you've gone into more of the details of like, well, this, for you, it was a huge jump, not just professionally, but financially too.
Yeah.
And I know that you've gone into that. I know you've gone into it on the Fizzle show. And I think you've touched on it when you talked to Amanda on her podcast. Mm-hmm. So we'll definitely link over to that. So if listeners want to know more of the behind the scenes of like, but how did you actually do that? Like you just said, it was 50 to 60% less than what you were used to bringing in. So like, how'd you manage that?
Yeah.
That's a huge question. So we'll definitely link over to those episodes so they can dive more into that story. But for right now, we're going to switch gears and let's talk about courage and clarity. And let's talk about when you decided to launch. I'm going to assume the fact that you already kind of had Fizzle in your corner, that was that primarily your focus of like, we just need to get this out to Fizzle members so they can kind of turn on to this one this podcast, in case this is also something that they want to listen to?
Yeah, I think it was definitely the motivation is twofold for sure. I will say that for Fizzle, our podcast at the Fizzle Show is our number one growth engine. It is the number one source of our customer growth. It's our best marketing channel. It is the thing that we do that drives membership more than anything else. So knowing that, my motivation was maybe we can bring more people in. Maybe we can reach a segment of customers that wouldn't look at the Fizzle Show and say, I want to listen to this. I bet once they listen to it, they'd be really into it. But my hope was that there's like a segment of customers out there, primarily female, who are maybe more in like the creative female entrepreneurial space, who aren't introduced to the Fizzle Show or aren't as familiar with Fizzle. So I think my main motivation was I really hoped to grow us in that direction. Of course, it was like also an amazing opportunity for me to serve our current people in a way that, allowed me to explore different ideas on the Fizzle Show. Obviously, I host that show with Jason Corbett. So there's 3 opinions. So for some people out there who are interested in my perspective and the mentality that I bring that is uniquely Steph, I think it was an attractive thing for sure. But I think more than anything, I really wanted to appeal to, and like you said at the beginning of this conversation, I heard over and over again from people, like, I can't even tell you how many times I heard, I'm so grateful you bring a female perspective. I love the feminine energy. I love what you bring to the Fizzle show. And all of that feedback that I kept getting just really showed me that there was an appetite for more explanation or exploration into what it is like to be a female entrepreneur. So I wanted to explore that, yes, for our current listenership, but to hopefully grow us to a new customer segment too.
Awesome. Okay. And so how many episodes are you in right now?
So let's see, at the time of this recording, I just finished episode 45. So I launched in January and it's July right now. So I've done 45 episodes.
Okay. Awesome. So what kind of effort are you putting in right now, if any, to grow this? Is it growing organically? What does that look like? How are you growing that movement?
Yeah, it's hard, right? You're doing it too, Brit. I mean, this is the work. I always tell people, like, this is the work of being an entrepreneur, like growing a platform. I think it's tempting for people to think that it just happens for people, and it's tough. I mean, you have to really consistently be putting yourself out there. So growth is something I'm always thinking about. I think organic growth is definitely part of it, but there's certainly a lot of effort on my part, no doubt. So, we do have an audience at Fizzle, and I do like to talk about courage and clarity as much as I can to, hit people who haven't jumped over to that podcast. But, social media has been a big part of my strategy. I think a lot of the people that I'm hoping to reach are on Instagram with kind of a highly sort of like, I don't know, image-based aesthetic. So I tried to tap into that. I've been trying to get more into Facebook. So definitely the social media platforms are a big part of it. But lately, my big interest is with growing an email list. We've talked a number of times over on the Fizzle show that email is where it's at. That's probably a whole separate podcast episode, honestly. But for email, having that audience that you can take with you no matter what happens. I'm sure people listening who have tried Instagram have been super frustrated by the algorithms, and it's always changing. And it's like, what's the flavor of the day? There's Snapchat and Periscope and Pinterest, and all this stuff comes and goes. So for me, the growth, like, I try to focus on the steady incremental growth, particularly in the realm of email, because I really believe my true tribe is following what I do in the email inbox. Those are the people who have invited me into their inbox and said, I want to get updates like personally from you. So I really love trying to create, enticing lead magnets that I can give to people, enticing freebies. I'd love to do more of that in the future. So really serving people in a way that invites me into their more personal space is my big focus for growth.
Okay, so tell me how, because I thought when this came across, when you launched your lead magnet, I thought, ooh, I've never seen anybody do this before, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts. I've never seen anybody do this before, and I like it. So tell the listeners about what you created as a lead magnet.
Yeah, so this was really fun. And for people who, I'll even go a step further and say, if you don't know what a lead magnet is, other people call it a freebie, but it's basically an offer, a free bit of helpful content, no strings attached, that people can get if they sign up for your email list. It's an awesome opportunity to teach people, to show them what you're made of, to give them value in a way that is free and unique and really plays on their needs and desires. So it should definitely be driven by what your customers are truly looking for. So I decided to create a season 1 guide. It's basically a handbook to the season 1 of the Courage and Clarity podcast, which featured 6 experts, 6 people who are very diverse in terms of their expertise. And if you remember Cliff Notes from being in school, right? Remember, like, you didn't read the book in middle school or high school, and you were like, oh God, I need to like not get in trouble with my teacher. You'd go to Cliff Notes and it would be all the best parts, all the important quotes, all the, hey, this is what happened, without having to read the book. So the season 1 guide of the Courage and Clarity podcast, it's meant to be a jump start into the podcast. It is 17 pages of the best quotes, tactics, strategies, all of my favorite parts of those first 12 episodes. And it's really juicy. I mean, it has legal tips from Christina Scalera. It has book writing tips from Cassandra Bodzak. There's a lot of ground covered. So the goal there is to give people a really robust flavor of this is what we do at Courage and Clarity. We inspire and uplift, and we also strategize and actionize. So it's a guide that people can check out if you want to go to courageandclarity.com/guide. It's totally free. And yeah, it's something that was super fun to create. And it came from at the end of my show, I do a pretty robust summary of like the best parts of the conversation. And I hear time and time again that is people's favorite part of my interviews, is hearing the takeaways that I give. So I listened to that and I said, if people are looking for takeaways, I'd love to give them something that they can have on their desktop in PDF format. So that's what I decided to create for people.
I'm noticing a recurring theme here, and it's, if I had to guess, probably one of the various reasons why the things that you do hit home with people pretty regularly. It's because you're listening. You're not just, okay, I'm sure that you have all kinds of ideas. And I'm sure that Corbett and Chase, I don't know them, but I'm sure that they come up with 5,000 ideas every second. So there's constantly ideas, but you bring such a grounded approach to saying, okay, I've got this idea, but what is that actually coming from? And what are my people or my potential people truly actually wanting and can find value in? Comes back to being tuned into that customer, listening, asking. I know that you're a big proponent for surveying and interviewing your people, and just really understanding that person down to like almost like a molecular level. Like it's not just like, yeah, I know kind of what they're talking about. There's like a trend over here. You're really getting in there and understanding how you can best serve them. And I just want to give you like a huge high five for that, because this quote unquote new economy of online business, that's what's going, in my opinion, I think that that's what's going to, and already setting you with Courage and Clarity and Fizzle apart from the rest, because you just know your people so well.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pick up on that. It means a lot, and it's a really high compliment, because that is what I learned in sales. I mean, people talk a lot about how sales is like just gives you the skeeziest feeling, and you hate selling. If you ask people, everybody will say, I hate selling. I don't want to be salesy. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not good at sales. That's what people say. And that is totally a matter of perception. It is absolutely how you look at it. For me, I am a fan of needs-based selling. If you understand needs, you don't have to sell. That's what's cool. There is no selling if you understand what people need and you are able to give them a solution. That is just the most basic form of trade, right? I mean, so I like to look at it as a mutually beneficial relationship versus me shoving myself on people. That helped me be successful in sales and then in sales training, was to see it as, listen, I'm not trying to convince anybody to buy. I'm not hawking snake oil over here and selling people stuff that doesn't work. Like, I fully believe in what we do at Fizzle. I fully believe in my ability to coach people. I have worked with thousands of people. I know how to help people get traction and be successful. So it comes down to, what do people need? And I think where a lot of people slip up, where I have slipped up and I have to remind myself constantly, is you, for example, Brit, like, the solution that people need in terms of marketing. Like, you might think they need something like, for example, they need a more consistent publishing schedule. Let's just say that consistency is like a big issue that people have, which it is, but they don't know that they need consistency. Like, they're not buying consistency. They're wondering why nobody's paying attention to them. They're wondering why their numbers aren't growing. So it's just a question of understanding how they're looking at it. If you put out a course that was like, get a more consistent publishing schedule, I wouldn't be surprised if people were like, if it fell flat on its face. Now, you probably would think, wow, I guess that this course is no good. Maybe I'm no good. I'm no expert. I suck. When in reality, it's just not speaking their language. If we just change that to, create viral posts, or, how to grow your audience overnight, something like that people are actually looking for. I think as the people with the expertise, we know the solution, but people aren't buying a solution, they're buying a better version of themselves. And that's what we have to kind of reframe. So once you understand what are they actually looking for, not only can you create stuff based on that, but you can actually use their real language to drive what it is that you're trying to get to them. And so listening, I don't know why it's so hard, because I think all of us like to go into our little creative laboratory and just create and then hope it does okay. But it's so much easier to just listen and see what people are saying and start to create things around that.
Boom. Yes. Amen. 100%. You said it so well. I love it. Okay. So now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, I know that you and the other Chase and Corbett on the Fizzle team, you guys take time out of your year periodically to review and set goals. That is definitely a part of the corporate world that I almost miss, because there was always a
Right.
time and a place for that sort of thing, and now it's on me to figure out that schedule and then do it, and then and actually do it. So, and I know that you guys have just gotten back from a planning session out in Portland. How do I know this? I'm just a freak. No,
I love it.
But I would love to know, what are you working on right now? And what are some things in the future that you're trying to culminate?
Oh man, yeah. It's so fun. And for people out there who are like, just like what you said, Brit, because I thrive off of that review process. I love accountability. I love teamwork. So for people out there who are solopreneurs, you can absolutely have a review process in your business too. And we highly recommend it. We've got an episode of the Fizzle Show all about the background of our process, which I'll make sure you get a link to. We call it our Energizer planning method. And it is very energizing. It's also very, I don't know, it's just very detailed. So it shows you where you've been, and it also helps you figure out where to go next. As far as our future, man, we have a lot of big ideas and big goals. It's interesting. I think people look at a business like Fizzle and personalities like those of Chase and Corbett, and to a lesser extent myself, in terms of success. And people think that like we got it all figured out, and that we're just like sipping Mai Tais on a private island. And what's crazy is like you get to this point where growth stagnates, and you could like say that this is success, but you have to kind of like keep rolling that boulder up the mountain and figure out like, okay, we've been around for 5 years. We managed to pay 3 people full time, and that's awesome. But like, how are we going to go for the next 5? And what does that look like? How do we keep up? How do we keep innovating? And that's actually really hard. It's actually very challenging when you get to the point where you're doing what you've always done because you've always done it. It can be challenging to come up with fresh ideas. So they're like, sometimes it's funny because new businesses probably look at a business like Fizzle and be like, oh man, I wish I could be that. In a way, we look at new businesses and we say, man, we kind of wish we had that totally fresh energy. So maybe the grass is always greener to an extent. For us, I think what we tend to do is we always try to come back to, what is it that we're trying to do for people? Like, what do we believe we're uniquely positioned to do? And we really come back to, we're honest, authentic business building. Like, that's what we do. We are about we are not, I don't know, like clickbait, like 10 things you need to know about building a business. Like, we make fun of that kind of stuff all the time. And, we do it a little bit, but we try to make it more about like, no, this is like a tribe of real people who are just trying to make an honest living doing something that they actually give a crap about, period. So in terms of like big projects we have coming up, we're really hoping to revolutionize the way people, I don't know, the way people have community, the way people create courses. That includes maybe software. We have a really unique mix of talent on our team. Chase is a developer. Corbett's a developer. Chase is a designer. I kind of have like the sales and people side of things. So we're a really cool mix. And we've got some big projects that I can't totally reveal just yet, but it is going to involve connecting people in new ways. It's going to involve more courses that go deeper into the things that we want to teach people. And I think what it comes back to is equipping entrepreneurs with all of the tools that they need to go out there into the world and be successful. I think that's how we see ourselves, as like the people who are capable of equipping and outfitting customers and entrepreneurs with what they need to go out into the world and be successful. That's really what we hope to bring. So more to come soon. But when we get together and do that planning, it's amazing. It's amazing how many ideas we come up with, for sure.
I can't even imagine the energy level of those sessions. Like I would feel like I would probably have just an energy hangover after that, just because there's just so much. Yeah,
we do. And it's like, we have like a 3-day maximum, then we have to like take a break. But for people who, whether you work with a team or not, I think doing this, we try to do it quarterly. So 4 times a year. Even if you're a solo person, I think it's very important to do this, because one of the big parts of this is celebrating our wins. That's not something we do enough, I don't think. Looking at, let's take Instagram, for example. I bet everybody listening who's on Instagram is beating themselves up right now about how many followers you don't have. Whereas if you were to go back 3 months ago, how much have you grown? Have you grown by 50 people or 100 people? You got to celebrate that. Like, that's a high five moment. So I love, even as a solopreneur, I encourage people to keep track of all their metrics, maybe using a tool like Trello, where they can do a monthly or quarterly review by yourself. Pop the champagne by yourself for all I care. But, like, really be sure to celebrate, like, where have I come from and what levers do I need to pull to actually reach my goal, instead of the frantic energy of like, grow, 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 grow. That's the burnout model. That's the burnout model, because you never feel like you're doing enough. You never feel like you're reaching your goals. The goalpost keeps moving, and that's a terrible feeling. So to really make sure you understand how you measure success, and then actually looking and assessing how things are going is so important, I think, for longevity in business.
Yeah. And listeners, hey, we've got that private Facebook group that hopefully you're already in. Any type of community that you can tap into that is a safe space to celebrate the wins and celebrate the losses. And this even has my mind going, like, how can we work in this regular goal setting review sort of thing into the group? So that's awesome. I need to write that down as soon as we stop recording, because I like it. All right. So I want to lighten things up, quick, easy questions before we wrap things up. So tell me, has nothing to do with business, but I would just love to know.
That's always fun.
Love to know the favorite place you've ever traveled to.
So my favorite place I've ever traveled to is Ireland. I love Ireland. It's so beautiful. I've been 3 times now. Once in college for like a second. I was studying in England and I just jumped over. But more recently, I just went with my family a couple months ago. And, I have Irish heritage. I went to Notre Dame, so there's a whole Irish thing there. But apart from that, it's just a really magical place. It's like the people there, I think we talk about lifestyle business. They have a lot figured out. They're so chill. They are like so friendly. It feels like a different era. And I love that. You go into like the pubs there and people are just like having pints together and they don't appear to know what time it is. And I don't know if they even have a job, or they probably do, but they just are not really too worried about it. And I really just enjoy that energy, and not to mention the just natural beauty of the country. So I have a lot more traveling I'd love to do, but right now Ireland is kind of my second home in a way.
That's awesome. Tell me about your favorite way to learn. Do you like to read? Do you like to listen? Do you need to get your hands dirty? What does that look like for Steph?
Yeah, I'm a talker, I guess. I like to talk out loud. I like to brainstorm. This is one of the reasons I love working with a team, is because sometimes I'll just hop on Skype with one of my teammates and we'll just like hash something out. I find I get energy from talking about concepts, which is also why I love to podcast so much. And I love this idea of learning out loud. Sometimes when I'm exploring new ideas, I like to just hit record on my microphone and start talking through things. So a combination, I think, of like, I love creating an outline and then talking it through. I find I'm able to, I think it's like, I've always heard that to teach is to learn. So teaching a concept is kind of how it solidifies in my brain. So I love getting something, turning around and teaching it, whether that's on a coaching session or it's on the microphone. That's my favorite way to like really go deeper into something.
Nice. Next question. What would you, out of the things that you do right now, be honest, what would you love to outsource?
Oh gosh, it's such a good question. Man, well, I will say, I'll give like two answers. One, we're actually about to outsource this. For over 2 years, I've answered all the support at Fizzle, and we're about to pass that off. And I'm excited about that. I love being with our customers, but I don't necessarily love resetting passwords. So I don't mind, but I'm excited to have some help with that. That's not something I've had, so I'm excited about that. I also just would love, I've heard of some other people who have this, and maybe it's like my someday. Have you heard of people who, especially families who have like a house manager? I love this concept. It's like a person who comes in and like, they're like, all right, here's what you're eating this week. The house is clean, laundry's done, and here's all the things you need to do. I would love for somebody to just tell me what I need to do. I don't have that. I have to like wake up every day and be like, what am I going to do today? I would love to have somebody, I would love to outsource like the running of the house. It would be really cool.
That's yes, I have heard of house managers, and there should be like, I don't know, if you can't hire somebody like that, there should definitely be somewhere like an easy way to learn how to do that. And then it just be like done.
Yes.
I don't know, just systemize it. I'm sure there's somebody out there that can do that. So if you're that person, go do that, please.
Yes. If anybody listening knows how I can better run my household, then please let me know.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, one last question. I want you to look back and tell me, what advice would you give yourself when you were first starting out of Groupon? You were that girl on her couch, hunched over her MacBook, trying to figure this thing out. What would you say to her?
Oh gosh, I feel like I would say so much. One thing, I'll say two things. One thing she suspected was true is actually true, which is that I had this suspicion that was like, what if the worst thing that could happen is that I have to go back and get a job? Like, could that be true? Could it be true that I really don't have that much to lose? And that was true. I think we all imagine that we are like, the stakes are a lot higher than they really are, when in reality, I don't believe you can truly make a mistake. I don't think there are mistakes. I believe everything is editable, and that has been my reality. I think it feels like when we jump off a cliff like that, we've just ruined up our whole lives and we can never go back. That has been not been my experience at all. The other piece of advice that she had no idea about that I totally see now, especially after working with so many entrepreneurs over at Fizzle, is I think that person that I was believed that it needed. Well, I can't even say it with a straight face because it seems so ridiculous now, but it's true. She believed that the people that she admired were like, had everything together, and that everything was like this really crisp, pretty process. When in reality, I have talked to so many entrepreneurs, so many successful entrepreneurs who didn't have a website when they got started, who didn't really have much of a following, who started taking customers right away. And I think that I was kind of doing that. And I definitely had imposter syndrome and thought I wasn't legit enough. And I just don't think that that's true. I think that if you have some value to offer people, you don't need all the bells and whistles. You don't need a beautifully designed website. You don't need 1,000 people on your email list. You just need to be a couple steps ahead of somebody else in order to hop on Skype with them and start having a conversation and start helping people. So helping people is enough. That is legit. That's what I would tell myself, because I think that I believe that everybody else out there had all these qualifications that I didn't have, when in reality, that is the work that gets you qualified, if that makes sense.
Totally. I love it. Such good advice. All right. Before we go, could you please tell the listeners where they can find you online?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, you guys can hop over to courageandclarity.com/guide. Just grab that free guide. That'll get you on my email list. You can subscribe to Courage and Clarity in iTunes. Other than that, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Steph Crowder with an underscore at the end.
Awesome. Okay. So you heard her, girls. Go check her out. Send her some love. And then hop into our private Facebook group to hear even more from Steph over the next few days.
Yay.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Keep the conversation going by visiting marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook, where you'll get to join that private Facebook group I've been talking so much about. There, you'll get to chat with our podcast guests. Yeah, they're in there too. And all of the other brilliant creative business owners. We're connecting, we're meeting our soul sisters, and we're building our businesses. all while in yoga pants. So come hang out with us. Again, visit marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook to get in. And one more thing. If you dig this podcast, would you be awesome and share it with someone? This entire Marketing in Yoga Pants movement is nothing without its community. So please share. And if you're really feeling the love right now, jump into iTunes. You're probably already there if you're listening to this right now. And leave us a rating and review. The more of those we rack up, the more the podcast will be found by ladies like you, and the stronger this community becomes. This episode was edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, so go find them at podcastengineers.com. This episode was also brought to you by my online marketing agency, Jam Marketing Group, and you can find us at jammarketinggroup.co. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Love ya. Bye.